On December 19th, 1944, I was ordered to smash my rifle against a tree and raise my hands. Nearly 7,000 of us did the same thing. It was the largest surrender of American soldiers in the entire European war. Most people have never heard of it. This is Southcoast hack. How does an entire regiment, men who held their line, followed their orders, survived 5 days of encirclement in sub-zero cold, end up here? Why does almost nobody know what happened? To understand that, I have to take you back 8 days. December 11th. A truck drops me at a crossroads near Saint-Vith, Belgium. A soldier from the 2nd Infantry Division hands me his foxhole and tells me I'm going to love it out here. The Germans have been quiet for weeks. The war is almost over. Get some sleep. I am 21 years old. 8 months ago, I was sitting in a university classroom studying differential equations through something called the Army Specialized Training Program. Then in the spring of 1944, the calculation changed. The infantry was short. The ASTP was dissolved. Roughly 1,200 of us were redirected to rifle companies, alongside aviation cadets pulled from flight school, men from disbanded anti-aircraft units, transfers from tank destroyers. We became the 106th Infantry Division, the last of 66 American infantry divisions activated during the war. Average age, 21. More than 5,000 experienced soldiers had been stripped from our ranks before we even shipped out, pulled as replacements for divisions already bleeding in France, and refilled with people like me. I am not elite. I am available. The soldier from the 2nd Infantry Division who hands me that foxhole is calm in a way that is not performance. He is calm because nothing has happened here in a very long time. He walks me through the fire lanes, shows me the latrine, tells me the Germans across the ridge are practically sleepwalking. Then he climbs into the truck that is taking him somewhere warmer, and I watch it disappear down the road. The Schnee Eifel is beautiful in a way that feels almost cruel in retrospect. Dense fir trees on a wooded ridge, the valleys below locked in December fog. No artillery exchanges, no probing attacks, no patrols returning with prisoners. Officers call this the Ghost Front, a stretch of lines so inactive that commanders send new divisions here to get comfortable before moving them to harder assignments. We are here to learn what the front feels like when it is not trying to kill you. Christmas packages from home are arriving at mail call. I get a box of cookies from my mother, slightly stale from the crossing, but still remarkable. My sergeant opens a can of peaches. At night, though, there are sounds. Across the ridge in the German-held darkness, engines, the low grind of heavy vehicles, the clank of equipment being moved in volume. I mention it to my platoon sergeant. Logistics traffic, he says. The Germans are always moving supplies around. Routine. Don't worry about it. I do not worry about it. Here is something I pieced together much later. The 106th Infantry Division is responsible for holding more than 20 miles of front line. Army doctrine prescribes a maximum of 5 miles per division. We are holding more than 4 times that. I can stand at one end of my platoon sector and see the other end, and there is a long stretch of frozen forest between us and the next American position. No reserves behind us. Everything committed forward. Someone above my pay grade made this calculation and decided it was acceptable. The Schnee Eifel is quiet. The war is almost over. Get some sleep. At 5:30 in the morning on December 16th, 1944, the world ends. The artillery hits without warning. Not a few ranging shots, not an escalating exchange. Hundreds of rounds simultaneously. And the specific horror of this forest is that German shells are detonating in the fir canopy above us. Tree bursts. Iron fragments and splintered wood raining straight down into the foxholes from overhead, where the helmet does not protect you, where the frozen ground cannot shelter you. I press myself into the dirt and feel every concussion in my chest. The barrage lasts most of the morning. When it lifts, the fog is absolute. Visibility, 15 yards, maybe 20. And in the trees, in the gray December light, I can see shapes, white shapes, German infantry in snow camouflage, moving through the firs, appearing and disappearing before I can fix them. I fire. My rifle is working. The men around me are firing. I try to reach company on the radio. Static. I try battalion. More static. The communication lines laid before the battle have been cut by the barrage. The information network that was supposed to tell me what is happening, where the attack is coming from, how many, which direction, has gone silent. My world compresses to the 10 yards around my foxhole. I fire at shapes in the fog. That is all I know. What I do not know, what I will not understand until much later, is this. The German 5th Panzer Army is not attacking my regiment. Not frontally. Not at all. The 423rd Infantry Regiment held every position it was assigned to hold. Nobody came through our lines. The Germans didn't need to. They went north of us, through a gap near the Losheim, where the 14th Cavalry Group sector was thin and then thinner. And south of us, punching through the line below the Schnee Eifel, 2 columns converging behind us. By nightfall on December 16th, German forces were behind the main line of resistance. The road back to St. Vith, the road that connected us to supply, reinforcement, everything, was already cut. We had not broken. We had held exactly what we were assigned to hold, and it did not matter at all, because the trap had closed around us while we were firing at shapes in the fog. The promised counterattack, the 7th Armored Division pushing through to break the German lines, never reached us. The fog that descended on December 16th never lifted. Every Allied aircraft in the theater is grounded. No air support. No airdrop of food or ammunition. The temperature at night is dropping toward 10 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. The overshoes had not yet arrived for our regiment. Some men are fighting in standard combat boots in December in the Ardennes. Frostbite is not a future possibility. It is happening now, in the foxholes, while we hold the position. I eat the last of my rations on December 17th. There is nothing on December 18th. On December 18th, we receive orders to attack towards Schomberg, seize the bridge, break the encirclement, re-establish contact with the rest of the army. We attack with what we have. Ammunition critically low. Men exhausted and cold and not fed in more than 24 hours. No coordination with units outside the ring. No way to know what German strength we will meet. We attack anyway. That is the order. The 423rd reaches the outskirts of Schomberg on the morning of December 19th. The attack fails under heavy German resistance. And then the ammunition runs out. Not low, out. Colonel Cavender's order comes down through the chain. Destroy your equipment. Raise your hands. I take my M1 Garand, the rifle I have carried since training, the rifle I fired at shapes in the fog for 4 days, and I smash it against a pine tree until the stock splinters. Around me, nearly 7,000 men are doing the same thing. The sound of rifles breaking against frozen wood is something I will not forget for as long as I live. Here is what the record shows. The 4-day resistance of the 423rd on the Schnee Eifel, holding the ridge, tying up German forces, forcing the enemy to rout around rather than through us, delayed the German seizure of the St. Vith road junction by 4 critical days. St. Vith was a choke point. German armor needed those roads west. Every hour we held, every hour the Germans spent managing our encirclement instead of pouring through was an hour the Allied line had to stabilize. The German reserves consumed in the Ardennes offensive could not be replaced. The Battle of the Bulge was defeated by late January 1945. The war in Europe ended in May. Most of the men who walked into German captivity on December 19, 1944, survived. They came home. The 106th Infantry Division story was quietly minimized in official accounts. The men spent decades making sure it wasn't forgotten entirely. A young intelligence scout in the 423rd named Kurt Vonnegut was among those captured that morning. He came home and spent the rest of his life writing about what happens to ordinary people when institutions make decisions at a scale that treats human beings as variables in an equation. He understood something about the Schnee Eifel that I think is exactly right. The men placed in an impossible position, who held until they had nothing left to hold with, were not the failure. They were the cost. The war is almost over, the sergeant told me. Get some sleep. He wasn't wrong about the war. He was just wrong about how much of it I had left to live through before it was.